friends.
Well, Rosa is, yeah, and there's Carolyn Wren. So there'll be a bit of an echo here for a little second while I go on YouTube, and then we will be live.
It's not on Facebook, Sid. You have to join the Zoom.
And we are live. Hello, everyone. And we are coming to you from YouTube because Facebook isn't playing games today, and that is fine. So we are here to launch a very special book for many reasons, because it is Joanne Fedler's Unbecoming. Have you heard the ripples of this book coming out into the world at the moment? It's coming for you guys. And Joanne, it's here. The day is here when we launch our first book.
The day is here, Karen. It is very special because also it is mine and Karen's first book in our literary imprint Lusaris that we've created. So it's kind of setting the tone, hopefully setting the tone. And our next book is going to be Graham Friedman's book, What the Boy Hears When the Girl Dreams, and that's coming out in a few months. So we are using this as a guinea pig, and we hope, well, actually that's probably very un-PC to say that something is a guinea pig. My God, I've got to stop using
It's a very elegant guinea pig, I have to admit, because,
terrible.
you know, it's...
But we're not experimenting on it or anything like that, like one might do on a guinea pig, because one should not experiment on guinea pigs. But it is a big experiment, and we're relying on the world to respond to it so that we know what we're doing right and what we need to improve on. So hopefully...
well, one thing we did right, Joanne, is the cover.
Oh, yes, we did. We did.
Isn't it beautiful?
That's thanks to Nida Bakovic. And that I wish my father would put on a shirt.
Oh, I can't say that. I'm going to have to slide across.
Can you please text my dad and ask him to put on a shirt? I don't think he knows we can see him.
I can turn off his camera if you want, Joanne.
I think so, please.
So, there are we. So, Joanne, we're here today to talk about, there we are, stop video. You're welcome. We're here to talk about Unbecoming, and I have to admit, I just love this book. It just shifts something within you, I think, and everyone who reads it at different stages of life, you know, it will shift something in them at different stages of life. You know, obviously I haven't went through menopause yet, not far off, but haven't went through menopause yet, but I've have now insights into it that are gifted to me through this book. But my goodness, what a wild adventure this book is. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to start and ask you, right? So this book is dedicated to your mother, Doreen. And I have to admit, because you wrote on the dedication, who taught me how to be loved. And I can connect and identify with this because my mother too taught me how to be loved. And it's a true gift to the person, isn't it?
It is. And what is so kind of interesting about that dedication is that my mother is the most unassuming person that you would ever meet. She is just somebody who kind of quietly gets on with things. She doesn't make a big display of emotion, or would probably even use the word love like that, the way that I've used it. And maybe, I don't know even if she's ever said to me that she loves me, but you know, I once had to do an exercise where I had to think about people who loved me unconditionally, absolutely without condition, where, you know, irrespective of anything I have ever done or become, or without expectation. And she was the first person that came to my mind, that somebody who just loves me in my most naked ordinariness. And it wouldn't matter what I decided to do with my life, whether, you know, I had made a success or followed any particular path, that she just kind of loves me in this very practical and loving way. And the way that she often expresses it is by cooking food for you and looking after you in that way. And it's kind of come as a mature and late insight, because I think as a younger person, one has an idea of love that is quite contaminated by, first of all, romantic ideas of love, and also kind of self-helpy type ideas around what love looks like and how it shows up. And as I've gotten older, my idea of what love looks like and how it feels has really shifted. And my sense of who my mother is as a person, like, she's become much clearer to me as an adult. As a child, she wasn't the kind of mother that I wanted because she was not very demonstrative. And as an adult, I look at her and I think, what a beautiful and amazing human being she is. But I feel like those are really recent eyes. And so I really wanted to dedicate this book to her.
Beautiful, beautiful. I can absolutely identify with that. And it's the unconditional love.
Yeah.
It's just such a valuable resource in this world. And you see that, when you see that and identify that, it's like a big aha moment, I feel. Okay, so Unbecoming, I want to talk about the you know, what motivated the theme of the story, because I think that our readers and our watchers are going to want to know where the book came from.
Well, that is like a
Go
really
for it.
big question. Kind of life, Karen. I mean, life is kind of what motivated this story. I mean, it is, in a way, the third beat or the third iteration of a theme, which started with Secret Mother's Business when my children were small, which is about a group of women who go away together for a night, and they get drunk and they eat a lot, and they talk about their lives and motherhood, and they kind of peel away some of these romanticized ideas of motherhood, and they really tell the truth. And that book kind of had an incredible reverberation, particularly for some strange reason in the German market. And then 7 years later, I wrote the next installment where my children were slightly older, more like tweens, you know, like between 10 and 13, and how my relationship with my children and myself and all of that had changed, and with my female friends. And then this book comes, you know, 7 or 8 years later, when you're sort of facing an empty nest. Your relationship certainly with your partner has changed, your relationship with yourself has changed, and certainly the relationship with your friends has changed, because I've realized a lot of the friendships that I had back in Secret Mother's Business and the reunion were friendships that were largely based on the fact that I had children and I was friendly with the parents of those children, and that we had all of that connective tissue that is completely disintegrated. Weirdly, that is also something that happens in a marriage, because the connective tissue of your children is something that is so tight. And then suddenly when your children kind of move away and become their own people, suddenly you're left two individuals who've done all this teamwork. You've worked so hard, done relays, helped, you know, if you're in a good marriage, which I am. But suddenly you're looking at and you're going, well, what is the purpose of this connection here? And so everything that you have become, everything you've done sort of falls apart, falls away. And it's just all beautifully manifested in the menopausal body, the way the whole system changes. Everything is changing. Your whole relationship with your body changes, with every part of it. I mean, your sex drive, even, it's like it like has it changes personality. It's like you have to relearn what it is, what you desire. All of these things change. And so for me, I was trying to speak some truth about all of that, try to hold some of that truth. And at the same time, really was so conscious of this context that we are in at the moment, which I think was very different from the first two books, which is this whole kind of climate issue that is sort of pushing against us, and we cannot have any conversations about anything that does not in some way acknowledge this bigger canvas and this bigger context that we are thrust up against. So I was trying to find a story and a way of connecting the first two books with this third book, but at the same time draw in, I mean, my books do draw in these big themes, and to try to say something poignant, truthful, and difficult about this stage of life, because it is a stage of life that is so beyond cliche. It is so beyond what you could imagine. you know, if you are really present to it, it is so mottled with paradox that if you cannot hold paradox, I think you will go a little crazy. I think you go crazy anyway, but I think at least you have a language to talk about that craziness if you can be with the incredible paradoxes that it throws up, you know. And so that's why this unbecoming for me was such a profound idea of how you have to let go of all the things you've become. And James, I mean, I did a lot of research as well on the stage of life, and James Hollis, who is one of the great thinkers around this time of life, you know, he writes in one of his books that who we have become is now our greatest obstacle. And that is a kind of where I sort of found myself with this book. You know, everything that you've become is actually now the problem that you have. You are now the problem that you now have to deal with. So I'm sorry, this was a very long-winded answer to your question, but
you've answered 3 questions in one there.
Okay.
We're on the same wavelength here. We know where it's going.
Okay. I could talk about this for a long time, but I mean, you know, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the word unbecoming, because it is such a poignant word. It's really important word, you know, that people do not fear unbecoming who they become, because there's that self-discovery in that, and the freedom and the evolution and all of those kinds of things that happens in unbecoming. And like the name, I know that we changed because it was first the sabbatical, remember?
Right, yes.
That's the version I read.
The final hour, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was just this divine moment when the unbecoming became what this book was.
Right.
Can you talk about that? That was really...
Well, that in a way, I guess, is actually what it's sort of, that is the story of unbecoming. It's like you're attached to this idea, you have a name for something, the sabbatical, and then at some point you realize that this thing, this name that you've been calling this thing all this time is just not the name that belongs with this thing. And so there is this point where it has to unbecome the thing that it was and become something else. And it's just about completely trusting and letting go and allowing something to be what it is, you know. And I wasn't sure of this title at the time. I really wasn't feeling it. I knew the sabbatical wasn't right, but I just wasn't feeling it. And so I really had to trust. But I also, you know, I have my little wise counsel of my inner circle of people that I ask advice from, and I had a few people. Ilse was one of them that I called in, and we discussed and we body tested and we felt into it, and including the you know, the subtitle of the book, there are secrets in the wild country they call midlife. And in fact, that there's a story around that, because originally there are no secrets in the wild country they call midlife, and we had the cover like this. I sent it to Ilse, and she sent me this frantic WhatsApp message saying, get rid of that word. No, that's not, there are secrets. It's not that there are no secrets, there are secrets. And I was like, oh, that's right. And so we weighed every single word, you know, every single word that, and right up until the last minute, you know, it was still becoming what it was. And finally, when something is right, it just settles, and you know that you can live with that. I mean, the whole story of how this book was written was that everything I wrote kept sort of, the foundations kept falling away, because every time I wrote a plot, something happened that made that plot not possible. And these were events around us. You know, walking off into the Australian bush was originally what the plot was about. And these women were walking to a waterfall, and there was a whole theme around the waterfall and why they were there and into the bush. And then, of course, there were these terrible bushfires in Australia, and there was no chance that any sane group of women would walk off into the bush where there was, you know, bush around you in bushfire season. So I changed it, and they were going to then walk towards the ocean, because at least at the ocean, you know, if there was bushfires, you know, you'd be there, and it was going to be post the bushfires. So they were going to walk through this bushfire ravaged territory to the ocean. And then, of course, COVID happened. And so no one after the bushfires is going to be walking through the Australian bush to the ocean. And so it's all set just before the Australian bushfire. So there's this whole sense of things that are about to happen, you know, that we know as readers, but that the women in the story don't know, but we know. And so that also creates a kind of a tension, a sort of a portentous tension of what we none of us know is going to happen. But as the reader, you know what is coming. And so you have that little did she know. As the reader, you know that, and you're holding that. And these women are innocent of that information, but they kind of also know that there are things that are happening around them and things that are coming. And I wanted you as the reader to feel that tension.
Absolutely. And I have to admit, there's no better word would look as good on that cover as that word.
Yeah. Well, how
it wouldn't be the same as the sabbatical. It wouldn't be the same.
Well, I do love the way that she's broken it down,
Yeah.
Unbecoming, you know, which really does show that dismantling of but it's also kind of a sculpture of a word. It's also, you know, it also has a shape. It also has its own form. But you have to break it down to see what the word is, you know. So there's like two
And the
ways.
flourishing and the burnt, you know, there's so many layers to this. It's so much more than a cover. It's crazy. It's just amazing. So the wilderness, I love that Jo stumbles across her, you know, the serendipitous events that happens, that she ends up in, you know, in this environment that, and with these other women that was at first not comfortable, and yet the safe place to share starts to happen, and magic happens in those types of places whenever women come together and their energies combine. And it wouldn't be the same if it happened in a bar or in, you know, in a park or something. In that kind of amazing space is where these conversations can happen, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I have gone away often with groups of women, and I know that this is inevitable, that this will happen when women are together. But of course, Jo goes, you know, the main character, she goes off and she doesn't want to talk to anybody. She's kind of had it with talking. She's had it sort of with friends, and she's kind of over it all, and really loves the fact that they're actually supposed to be doing the silent walk, and no one's going to talk to her. No one's going to ask anything of her because she's tired of having things asked of her. But you know, whatever we're holding, you know, and we don't want to happen, of course, is the thing that is going to happen. And I actually went and spent 2 nights in a cave in New South Wales with a group of women as a kind of to really embody this feeling of what it would be like to sleep in a cave for 2 nights in September last year. And a friend of mine, when I was still trying to decide where in Australia I was setting it, she took me to spend a night out in the Australian outback, where we literally slept in swags under the stars in winter, with the kind of this canopy of this night above us and the sounds of the wild around us. And when we woke up in the morning, there had been a dingo right at where we were, because all our foodstuffs had been moved and everything overnight. So I really wanted to get close to the wild myself in order to write about what it would be like to be in the wild. But it's very important, this idea of going into the wild. And so interesting that since then, this David Attenborough's new documentary he's witnessing, called A Life on Our Planet, has come, and he talks about how important it is for us to rewild the planet, and how wild places are disappearing, and how important it is for us to stop taming nature and allow nature to become wild again. And there's that wildness in us as well, I think, that re-emerges. I mean, certainly for me, during this time, this climate of menopause, I have felt a kind of like a renewal of a wildness that I've never had the freedom, I have never felt the freedom to have before. And it's kind of quite intoxicating and quite liberating, and sort of makes me a little bit mad and a little bit unpredictable. And I really love that, because first of all, you cannot, as a mother, be mad and unpredictable. You know, you really are committed to a certain kind of sanity for a time. But I really feel unshackled by those constraints right now. And I could really just fly off in any direction at any time. And it feels incredible to know that, that motherhood did not tame me so much that I feel I could never just burst into, some kind of crazy iteration of myself.
That's it, isn't it? freedom of your soul, really. It just,
Yeah.
it really, and then, to be able to go and explore, it's just so beautiful. And you describe it so beautifully in the book, and I love the dialogues. You can just picture everything happening in your mind, and it's just exquisite writing. But the book is also, it's so highly entertaining. I love your humor. I was giggling at parts and everything. What? It was just in stitches, and I could hear your voice coming through it, and I know, it's just it's so amazing.
Well,
But
I appreciate that, because the thing about this book, and it's really true of the other two as well, these are books in which nothing happens, really. Nothing happens, not from a plot point of view in any event, and there's also something that I used to feel, certainly for the first two, I sort of felt that it was a flaw of these books, that really nothing happened. It was just women getting together and talking, really, and and the dynamics in the relationships. But I have to tell you that for this book, I see it as such a reinterpretation of these old paradigms of our addiction to plot and to things that happen. And what is a happening anyway? I mean, what is a happening? I think when your periods stop, that is like the greatest happening of a woman's life. Like, it is such a happening. But from a plot point of view, like, where would that fit? It doesn't fit in, in any of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Where would you story that, So I kind of feel like, we have to rethink what it means to tell a story, and what women's stories look like, and what it means for people to have something happen to them. Nothing can happen, and yet everything happens in that space, in that emptiness, if you are watching and looking, and if you are part of a bigger canvas and a bigger environment, like a bigger moment around you, there are lots of things happening all the time. I mean, I feel this every day when I go swim in the ocean. Like, I'm just a little fish in the sea. There is so much happening, around me.
being in those moments, like I adore whenever women come together. And sorry, men, it's just the thing that I've experienced myself. Whenever women come together, things happen, as in an energetic thing, those kind of happenings are. And it's the conversations, and evolution happens in those kinds of environments.
Absolutely. And I think if you hear something, if you can hear something in those moments that you haven't heard before, and that changes your life, something has happened. I mean, that beautiful Mary Oliver poem where she talks for the swan, where she says, and have you understood what beauty is for? And have you changed your life? Like, some tiny moment like that can be the greatest happening of your life, And so this idea of, like, this addiction to a certain kind of plot, and it is a very kind of old paradigm thinking around what makes for story, when we have a different rhythm and a different feeling in that story. We're not looking for that crisis moment and the call to action and the fall from grace and whatever it may be, even though emotionally one can go through. I want you in this story to go through a whole range of emotions: laughter, tears, a sense of grief, a sense of joy, a sense of, poignancy, all of those things. And at the end of it, something to have rattled inside of you, because who knows what will fall from that rattling.
Absolutely. And I love that each of the characters, when they're talking, you hear them and you see them differently. You just do it so well. It's beautiful. We're coming up to about halfway now, Joanne. So I just want to invite anybody who's in the room with us here. There are many. If you want to pop into the chat box a question for Joanne, I'll ask you later. But I was going to invite you to read a section of the book if you would like to.
Sure. I mean, if people want to stay for that, that's absolutely fine. I will. I have got a little thing that I'm going to read tonight. I've got a few friends coming around, so I'll read this. It's one of the funnier things, one of the funnier sections about the rage. That this is called this is from the chapter called The Burning Woman, and it's about this rage that has, that I started to feel. So, I don't know why you're so angry, Frank tutted. How fucking dare you tell me how I'm feeling? His equanimity was baffling. Couldn't he see every vegetable in the supermarket find me an exception? was asphyxiated in cling wrap or polystyrene. Facebook had become a platform for white supremacists, chauvinists, and climate change denialists. We were still mining coal in Australia, and who the fuck had eaten my vanilla slice I'd left in the fridge? Don't sweat the small stuff. You'll give yourself a hernia, he'd said. And God help me, a cliche thrown in there was like a lit cigarette flicked into a drought-ravaged bush. Besides, none of this was small stuff. I'd been saving that vanilla slice. I'd slammed the door on my way out. I'm going for a walk. You do that, Frank called out, and take some nice deep breaths. I strode out, seething. Something in me had ruptured with no assurance that it had finished rupturing. I had never known rage. Passion, yes, but not anger. I'd grown up with an angry father, and I had made my vows about not repeating history's histrionics. A temper is not very attractive on a lady, my Granny B would say when I'd express a strident opinion or raise my voice. So I'd adjusted myself. I'd managed my ire with the same tenets I applied to my weight. With deprivation and denial, I starved myself of legitimate fury against sexist jokes and casual misogyny, so as not to fuel the stereotypes or be responsible for further anti-women sentiment. I became an expert at concession, hyper-flexible with my wants, so accustomed to their erosion to accommodate others. All the while, I was erasing myself with every "I don't mind" I uttered. But as soon as my periods dried up, my tolerance for my own tolerations ceased, and I finally let rip the flatulence a marriage forces us to keep tightly sphinctered in our hearts. As my mercury rose, the world around me seemed to become a madhouse, and why was I the only one who could see how the cling wrap on the pumpkin was connected to the death of phytoplankton in the ocean and the smug Facebook post by a journalist who claimed the feminist movement had gone a little too far? I'll leave it at that, but then it does go on to a moment where I rip my stockings off me in an absolute fury about who designs these garments of affliction for women. And I swear never ever to wear anything castigating, tight, or unhappy on my body. I never would allow myself to feel that sense of constriction in my clothing ever again, because it felt to me like that was, a symbol of everything around me. So I now only wear very comfortable clothing.
And Joanne, this is that you're writing like that, there's so much of you in this, and you're giving us the freedom to be that, it's just, oh, your writing is just so, yes, okay, going, yay. Inviting us to, but it can be, your writing is yet confronting, yet so entertaining, and we're going, and there's we are going through all of the emotions in it. So one of the big themes in your book is about menopause and midlife and things like that. So, and can you give us some advice for women who are going through that right now? You know what it's like whenever you start to venture into that, and there's hot flushes and stuff.
I have no advice to offer anymore. That is one of the amazing things about being where I am right now. I do not feel like an expert in anything, or have advice to give anybody, to tell anyone how to live their lives or what they should do or how they should live their lives. I would like to give encouragement maybe to to someone who is going through menopause, to see it as an incredible rite of passage and a kind of a portal into a totally different phase of life. I mean, I would really encourage women to just tear off the names and the ideas that menopause has in our culture around, oh, woe is me, and how invisible you become, and all of this kind of stuff, to really tear it off like I did with those stockings, and to really find out for yourself, how is this for me? Not how have I been told this is, or how should this be for me, or what are other people saying about it, but truly to embody that experience and ask yourself, how is it for me? And to find the truth of that experience for yourself, because it will be different for every single one of us. Of course, there'll be, large numbers of us who experience things in a similar way, and we can learn and laugh at each other's experiences. But what is interesting in the chapter where they discuss menopause, these women, every single woman is dealing with her menopause in a different way. Some women are on hormone replacement therapy, others wouldn't touch it. Others are taking black cohosh, and others are doing tantric dancing, and others are doing nothing, and some are eating yams. And all of these things are true. Nobody has the answer. No one has the one answer, you know. There is no advice. There are only possibilities. And so, you know, my advice would be to explore the possibilities and find the one that is your own truth, because that is, I think, the wonderful thing. You know, with motherhood, we all feel like we've got to kind of get this right because the stakes are so high. If you mess your children up, oh my God, you are inflicting untold suffering on them and future generations. So the stakes are so high, we have to get it right. With menopause, you know, and this time of life when your children hopefully are enough in their own lives that you do not have to take responsibility for them, you have the freedom to fuck up and make mistakes and do it wrong and get it wrong and get it wrong again and try something different. Because what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, I mean, it's just all in a big experiment without, you know, the consequences are now really entirely only yours to deal with, you know, and possibly a partner who, if he or she has not sort of entirely supportive, you don't need to sort of hang around either. You kind of don't need to do, you know, you don't need to. So it's just a very freeing time of life, I think. And so my advice would be not to take advice from anybody.
That's the answer I wanted. Yes. No advice. Just
no
be
advice.
you. Just
yeah.
be you. Honor with your journey.
Fine,
It's all
yeah.
individual.
That's right.
Can we talk about some of the characters here? Can I ask, have you got a favorite?
You know, that is an interesting question. Do I have a favorite? I kind of love Kiri, who is, you know, this sort of Pacific Islander woman. She's the nurse and she's like no nonsense, and she just does stuff. She's sort of such a kind of warm and no nonsense kind of character. But I mean, I've had a lot of people read it, and a lot of people love Kate, who's kind of quite brittle and quite like sharp and tells the truth and goes right in there. I mean, Fiona's a little bit, you know, softer, and she's the one who gets everyone into this walk and whatever. And Liz is very, you know, quite, I think, unlikable, at least up until a certain point, you know. And I think I'm hoping that what everybody, you know, what you feel as you move through the story is how your feelings about the characters start to change, and the characters you've judged as unlikable, maybe you see a different side to her, and you hear part of her story and you think, who am I to judge your decisions, your choices, the way you've decided to live your life, you know? I do feel like this is a book of, you know, we as young mothers, we are so judged, and we judge other mothers. I mean, whether we do it verbally or quietly and internally, we all do it. And it's a way of us measuring, you know, how we're mothering, you know, how we're doing the job, you know. But I really feel like this is the point in our lives where we can actually really give up all of that critique of what other women are doing. So, like, there are some mothers in the story who've made decisions that you, Karen, me, and maybe some of the other women in this group wouldn't have chosen. But I'm hoping that as a reader, you wouldn't look at this woman and judge her for the choices that she made, because that was the truth for her at the time. And so I'm hoping that as an older mother, one can look back on decisions you've made, and acts that you've done, and things that other people have done, without that incredibly critical voice. Because I do believe that we move beyond that. You know, if you're critical of other people, that voice is really just a voice that is self-directed. If you're critical of other people, you are self-critical. And I'm hoping that we can reach a time in our lives where we just lay that all down. Just stop being so critical of other people and judgmental of what other people are doing, and of one's own choices. You can be a lot more forgiving, I think, at this age, because you've kind of lived enough. You've kind of done enough. You've made enough mistakes, and you've seen other people make mistakes, and you've seen the wheel of karma turn, and you've seen people who've made mistakes reap the rewards, or the, you know, or the shames, or the tragedies of those choices. And when you see that happen, you can't be judgmental of a decision, because you've seen that that person has really paid the price for that. So it kind of gives you compassion for all the mistakes that other people make and that you've made, you know, because you've lived enough. And I think that's one of the great joys of being, the great privileges of being this age, is you have lived enough to have seen enough of that wheel turning, for you to be able to go, I don't, you know, who knows what happens next? Who knows what happens next?
I have to admit, Carrie's one of my favorites, and I love the tequila and with her and Liz. I was just reading that, and
But we
just
all
after.
make mistakes. I mean, that's one of the things that she says. You know, we all make mistakes. Don't be so hard on yourself, because we all have done that, put our foot in it, and said something that we regretted, or said something that you thought was just an unforgivable thing to say, and how could I have been so stupid? You know, we all make mistakes, and I hope that that is one of those sort of resonant messages that people will take from this story, is that we've all been, you know, we're all parts of these different women as well. I wanted us to see ourselves in bits of each of these women, you know, and to realize we're all just composites of these different characters, you know, these different archetypes in a way.
Whether we want to admit it or not, hey Joe. You gotta go.
You don't have to admit it.
I gotta lighten it here a bit, because I've got there's a thing that I just giggled out loud at, because I can, you know, it connected with me in a funny way. It's not, you know, it's Yasmin chuckles. Lipsticks makes your brainwaves dance, and I was like,
yeah, I know you love your lipstick. I know you do love your lipstick.
It makes my brainwaves dance. Like, who even thinks to write that? It's amazing. That simple line. I was like, that's how I'm gonna
Well, I'm
roll.
hoping lots of women will come away from here and go and buy themselves a really like outrageous lipstick, and just see what happens when you put it on.
Guys, go get yourself some red lipstick and wait to see what happens. It makes your brainwaves dance.
Yeah.
It's just fabulous. It's actually true as well.
Well, listen,
Maureen,
Karen, I actually have got a whole lot of people arriving here in like 15 minutes.
okay, we're going to wrap this up really fast. Okay, so Maureen just wanted to say, Maureen Duplessis, sorry Maureen, but she does say, so awesome to be able to see you and hear you reading your own stupendous writing that echoes with all of us and inspires and encourages us all. Thank you. And Karen, best accent in the world. Oh, see, forgiven. I'm forgiven already. That's wonderful. Well, Joanne, we're just going to then leave it at this and let you go and have the next stage of the celebrations for today. But guys, we wanted to share about just for 1 minute maybe, Joanne, about what you did yesterday, what the guys came out and did with you yesterday from Booktopia, and where everyone can go and get their copy in Australia and New Zealand.
Right. Well, I did sign 500 copies yesterday of Unbecoming, and I did start. I thought I was just going to be an hour, and so after an hour, I had signed about 150, because I was writing quite a long message in each one, and I said, no, I'm happy to sign all of them. So they brought me, you know, all 500 copies, and as I was moving the books from one side to the next, there would be more books arriving, and 500. I think you know, I was a bit you know, I'm very like, you know, I set myself a goal, I'm going to sign every single one of them. And they said, you can stop at any time. And eventually I've shortened the message. And then after another 100 copies, I realized that if I didn't just sign with love, Joanne Fedler, I was just going to be there for like 6 hours. So I think at the last 250 copies were just with love, Joanne Fedler. But it was an amazing experience to sign all those books, to touch each one and bless each one that's going to go out. So let's hope that all of those go out into the world. And Karen and I, we've set ourselves a goal of selling 5,000 copies of this book, and so that's what we need to do. And so if you could tell people about it, first if you could read it, and if you love it, you could tell people about it and share.
That's how we reach our goal, is by, you know, this book will shift you, so share it with people in your circle. Shout it loud and we will help you. And if you got a long message or a short message in Booktopia book, let us know. Give us a screenshot.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Thank
And
you so much,
thank you,
Joanne,
Karen.
for spending this
Thank you
time with
so
us
much.
today.
I'm so excited that our first book has come out into the world, and I look forward to us celebrating and launching many more titles under Lusara. So thank you, Karen, for your incredible support. I feel very, very blessed to be able to have this book out in the world, and with you as my publishing partner. So thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for
so
today.
special, so special.
And
It
thank you
really
to
is
everybody
true.
who made the time to be here live.
Yes, let's put everyone down. Let's see where they are, the gallery view. There we go. Okay, everyone, we're going to let Joanne go and get ready for a party. So if you want to say, unmute and give a big clap, and let's get Unbecoming launched into the world.
Thank you. These are thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks,
Bye.
Karen. Bye.
Bye, Joanne. Bye,
Bye,
Miriam.
Karen. Bye-bye.
Bye, Elsie.